I want to share the top 3 things that I've learned from his watercolor workshop in Munich, Germany. And as a tribute, I want to paint him, Hieu, in his own style as much as possible. Because honestly, I feel as artists, we don't get painted so often. So I thought I'll take this opportunity to paint Hieu, aka Kelogsloops. Exciting news, I'll be interviewing him. So if you ever had questions before that you'd like to ask him, drop them in the comments below by 2025 March 10th. The full interview will be published on April 15th. I'll have the link to the podcast below. Okay, so let's dive in. I just want to explain what typically Hieu does, I think. So he says that he often does scribbles. So here I've created like a bit of only 2, but sketches that I thought I'll want to work with. And then basically I did a quick thumbnail sketch from that, and this is my preliminary study. There's a painting of Hieu's that I quite love, and I wanted to get that feeling with the clouds and the blue sky. I think that's his signature kind of look with the gold elements here, so that's what I'm planning to do. And I've created some masking fluids here and then put on some watercolor, but basically masking fluid is something I typically don't use, so I don't know if this will turn out good or not, but we'll have to just see. Let's get into the top 3 techniques that I have learned from Kelogsloops workshop. Technique number 1, skin tones. He teaches across his videos, including at his workshop, that you use just 3 colors, the primaries, the yellow, the red, the blue, to mix skin tones. And depending on the skin tone, if it's more orangey, more reddy, you adjust the colors as you go to match the skin tone of the reference photo. One key thing I've recognized through painting this portrait of Kelogsloops is that he really layers the skin tone very slowly. He waits for the first layer to dry, works on the second layer, and across his other podcast interview, he has mentioned quite often that he builds on layers. He thinks it's even crazy that some artists just do a couple layers and call it done. Another thing that I've noticed while painting this portrait is that he tries to take advantage of everything that he can control, that it is within his control. For example, I typically like to have less control in my work and I'm more intuitive. When I'm creating the skin tone, I do mixing on the surface and I mingle the colors in. Like I even charge in with certain colors from the palette that I've created and charge in. Whereas I think Hieu makes the washes, whatever he's using on the palette, tested on a watercolor scrap paper, and then check for the color and then works on the surface of the paper. That's how I think he manages to create such a smooth skin layering effect on his watercolor paintings. Technique number 2 is negative space as hair. I've noticed that he plays a lot with creating negative space for the hair, which gives it a bit of anime look, and he does mention quite often in his videos that he loves anime. And one of the things that I feel like I connected with him was Sailor Moon, because I basically grew up watching Sailor Moon in Japan. That was kind of like a lovely thing to know about him. This only works, I think, if you're coloring in the background, and he often uses like indigo and very dark, rich blues in his paintings. So I think with that, the white background of the hair kind of makes sense and makes it look really pretty. So tip number 3 is guiding the viewer's eyes, his use of composition and focal areas. So this was a huge takeaway for me. It was when everything clicked about composition. So I struggled very much with composition from the start of my painting practice, and often my partner would mention that something is quite off. And nothing helped. I looked through books, I tried to study it. Kelogsloops' simple way of approaching this and explaining it clicked with me.
ever since. Basically, he mentioned that be mindful of placing things or even using color to guide the viewer's eyes throughout the painting. I don't think I quite did it right in this painting, but like you see, for an example, the masking fluid that I placed from the right-hand corner of the painting, and then it flows to the left, goes down, and then crosses through Kelogsloops. And this kind of creates that flow that the viewer will look through there, and the main focal area or area of interest or focal point, whatever you call it, is in Hieu. That's the main thing that I want people to look at. And basically, I've also created the clouds, the flow. Well, they don't really look like clouds, but a flow that you then go from Kelogsloops, and then your eyes kind of follow out the painting again to the right hand corner. His explanation of this composition really clicked in with me ever since, and that's been one of the huge things that I've learned from his workshop. So of course, this is not all the techniques that I'm sharing because I don't want to give away too much, but seriously, you have to take his workshop. It was one of the best things I've invested in, and he's a great artist, and he's such an energetic person to be around with. It's very contagious. So now I like to kind of share with you my thoughts after the painting.
So I'm pretty much done with the painting. I have to say I struggled a lot. As you know, the hands are not quite done. I struggle with that. I struggle with the clouds because I didn't do a careful study of it. And I did struggle with the masking fluid, which was huge. So I know what I will be asking Hieu. It's going to be about the masking fluid. I think the problem was somehow the arches didn't really work well with the PBO drawing gum. It's too thin, it doesn't pull out, and I see a lot of Kelogsloops video where he uses the Winsor & Newton masking fluid, and I laid this on top of the PBO because I was like, I did a test after I lay it on this paper on the final painting, and then I tried to pull it and it didn't pull, but the Winsor & Newton pulls, so I tried pulling that and it worked. So I kind of laid that on top of the PBO, and I kind of ruined some areas like here. It got all messy, so I had to go over it with acrylic, as well as this circle right here, but it was okay at the end because I tried to clean up any dirty kind of feeling to the painting. I put adhesive here, and then I put the gold leaf. One more challenge that I faced was that I forgot the paper had a bit of a scratch mark here, which then made the pigment be absorbed quite heavily here, and it created this like weird mark. So I had to create these layers, which I wasn't planning to put all these shapes here. I would have just probably went with this 2 layers of this blue in the background. But overall, I'm happy. I think I got the feeling of what Hieu kind of looks like. And I must say, he is so detailed oriented with his work. He's so precise with his work. He pushes his watercolor to meet his digital art. So I kind of understand it, but it's impossible. And it's interesting how, for me, that's not what gives me joy, trying to create that precision. So I believe that Hieu would kind of create washes before he lays it down, and even the skin tone, he would create one certain watercolor before he creates the wash. But it's my habit to kind of go in and mingle the color on the paper rather than on the palette, which I think he does because there's more control if you do it that way. But it kind of just shows throughout the whole painting. I just like working wet on wet and more on the surface rather than the palette. So I think it kind of shows in the skin, which is not quite him. And even these like layers on his clothes, you don't see that much with Kelogsloops' work. He's more precise. But anyhow, I really enjoyed it. I hope you did too. And don't forget to leave questions in the comments below. I do have 28 questions already, but it'll be lovely to hear your questions as well. When you write the YouTube comment, I'll look at that name and I'll mention your name as well in the podcast. So hope you enjoy it. It's April 15, 2025. I also did a video where I shared my experience of Kelogsloops workshop, that 3 days, and I did have like this struggle within me. So maybe you can relate as well. So yeah, check that video out. I'll leave it at the end. Okay, till next time. Take care. Bye bye.